What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six podcast and our All 32 series, the series where we catch you up with insiders to give you the information that you need for every single NFL team. I'm Katie Mox, and today we'll be talking about the Cincinnati Bengals with who else but John Breech, super friend of the podcast and writer for CBSSports.com, Bengals insider. Breechy, how are we doing?
Katie, I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure if I'm more excited to be talking about the Bengals today or the fact that I think this is our first one-on-one podcast. We dumped Brinson. There's no Wilson. Finally, we can have some real conversation. It's about time.
It's about time. Yeah, Brinson is on his apology tour right now, doing some radio hits to talk about his quarterback tiers, which we have a good laugh about in our group chat, don't we?
Absolutely. But you know what? I can't rip him too bad because he had Joe Burrow in his top tier. And that's really, I read that, stopped reading. That's all I needed to know.
All right. Well, then let's just get into it right now, Breech. Joe Burrow, he recently said that he is done talking about contract negotiations, but there still isn't one that's happened yet. Of course, he is up for a mega deal. Should there be any cause for concern, or how do you feel about this?
0% there should be cause for concern. This is not going to be an issue. I know that the Bengals have this reputation for being stingy, for being cheapskates, but let me just tell you, there is one position that Cincinnati Bengals take care of. It is at quarterback. When they had Carson Palmer in the early 2000s, they made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. They didn't think twice about it. They gave Andy Dalton a huge crunch. Andy Dalton! And of course, look, everybody knows Joe Burrow is a tier 1 quarterback. They're going to give him whatever he wants. So this, I don't think there is any concern here. I do think a deal will probably get done before the season starts. So that means you got a good month and a half to kind of negotiate, and we'll see. It's going to boil down to what Joe Burrow wants. Does he want to be the highest paid player by $5 million? If he wants it, I think the Bengals would do it. Or does he want to go this kind of Tom Brady route and take just slightly under market value and let them build around the rest of the roster? And Burrow, you know, he's kind of hinted at possibly doing that. So I think it's going to be a mystery what this contract looks like. Is he going to blow everything out of the water, or is he going to say, you know what, I want to keep the Super Bowl window open for the next 10 years?
He seems like a guy to me that would want to keep the Super Bowl opening open for the next 10 years, but we'll see. He doesn't seem like the type that wants to be the highest paid.
Well, and I'll throw in real quick, Katie. Look, we saw the party 4th of July weekend. The Fanatics owner, that Michael Rubin, I think was his name. Well, you know who was there? Tom Brady, Joe Burrow. So I'm sure Joe Burrow, they're in a couple pictures together. He was probably talking to Tom a little bit like, hey, man, those 6 Super Bowl rings, how do I get those? And Tom's like, do the discount, man. Do the discount. So if you're a Bengals fan, you love seeing Tom Brady and Joe Burrow talking.
Yes, absolutely. And look, you can see on this graphic right here, Joe Burrow has the most quarterback wins for a first 3 season at 5. He's already overcome adversity, right? He had tearing the ACL, then he comes back, gets to a Super Bowl. He's the only quarterback to beat Patrick Mahomes 3 times. To say that he's been extremely productive would be the understatement of this century. Like, how high is the ceiling for Burrow in year 4?
You know what's crazy is that this is my talking point from like 2 months ago, and Brinson just kind of stole it and made it his own. But this really feels like this could be Joe Burrow's true coming out season. This is a guy that has already led his team to 2 AFC title games and a Super Bowl. I mean, we're talking about, you look at his rookie year, he had to deal with the COVID offseason, so they didn't really get to practice. You don't get to learn the playbook as much as you'd like. There were just all these restrictions in place. You look at his second year, his offseason was ruined because he was rehabbing from his ACL injury. You look at his third year, offseason ruined because his appendix decided to blow up in his body. He had to get the appendicitis. And so now, finally, there's no ACL to worry about. His appendix is working. There's no pandemic, and he gets a normal offseason for once. So he's going to go into the season week 1, week 2, week 3. I think he's going to look a lot better early in the season than he has the past 3 years. And then as long as he continues to stay hot, because he seems to get better during the second half of the season, man, he could put up some huge numbers this year.
Well, speaking of, he is the second favorite behind only Patrick Mahomes for the league MVP at plus 750. His yards prop is 4,425.5. Could this be the year that he breaks through that 5,000 yard plateau?
Yeah, I think what the Bengals love to do, obviously, when you have the weapons that they have, is throw the ball. Look, you want to put the ball in the air early and often, and when you look at Joe Burrow's numbers, I think it is kind of surprising. Uh, People may say, "Hey, look, Joe Burrow has never thrown for even 4,700 yards. He threw for
Yeah.
4611 in 2021. He threw for 4475 last season, but that was in 16 games. So, maybe you give him that 17th game where he throws for 280 yards, and then he ends up, almost at 4,800. But yeah, he's never really gotten close to that number. I think that 5,000 is you see Patrick Mahomes do that, and the Chiefs don't really have a ground game. The Bengals do like to run the ball. They have Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
You like to not have Joe Burrow get killed in every play, but I think with the improved offensive line that we'll see Burrow pass more. And so I'll take the over.
Take the over. Yeah, 4,425 and a half. So maybe not 5,000, but the over on his passing yards. And look, Burrow is amazing. We could talk about him all day long, but you know what they say? A quarterback can only really go as far as his protection, will take him. So the O-line has been a sore spot for the Bengals for the past couple of years. 2021 gave up 55 sacks last year, a little bit better, 44 sacks. Enter Orlando Brown Jr., 4-year deal, $64 million. How improved do you expect this O-line to be? Because that's really going to affect a lot of Joe Burrow's production as well.
Yeah, the O-line is everything. I mean, we saw Burrow running for his life, really, his first year, kind of his second year, and things did get better last year, but they still weren't great. I mean, we saw him struggle really in the playoffs is when the offense tends to struggle a little bit more because the competition's a little bit better. And so you look at this offensive line, though, this is the best one that Joe Burrow is going to be playing behind since he's been there. I mean, obviously, the signing of Orlando Brown, putting him at left tackle, that's such a huge upgrade over what they've had at that position. And I think the big question mark, obviously, is Jonah Williams. He was the left tackle last year. They're saying, hey, Jonah, forget the trade demands. You're not going to go to a better team. So this is the best team you're going to play for who wants you. And we need you to play a right tackle, buddy. And so the question is, can Jonah Williams move over and make the jump to right tackle without slipping? So we've heard offensive linemen say how difficult it is to make that transition. So there's no guarantee Jonah Williams is moving to right tackle and be successful. But if Jonah Williams plays well at right tackle, man, this line is going to be dirty. I mean, this is going to be a line. It's going to be tough to get to Joe Burrow because they won't really have a weak spot if Jonah Williams looks good at right tackle.
I mean, tough to get to Joe Burrow, plus the tree of pass catchers that you guys have. I don't know. Maybe he can get over 5,000 yards this year. That was going to be my next question. Obviously, Jonah Williams has not played right tackle, I believe, since his freshman year at Bama. So we'll have to see how that works out. Now, moving on to defense, Myles Murphy, I believe 28th overall in the draft, edge out of Clemson. What impact do you think that he's going to have this season? He's plus 3,000 to win Defensive Rookie of the Year.
At plus 3,000, I might, do the old sprinkle of $2 or $3. Nothing big, though, because I don't think he really has a chance to win it. I think what the Bengals really did this year in the draft is they drafted guys for the future. And obviously, that's what everyone does in the draft. But we're talking probably 2 years down the road. When you look at someone like Myles Murphy, and you look at who the Bengals already have in their defensive front, they have Sam Hubbard, they have Trey Hendrickson. So Myles Murphy, I think, is obviously going to get playing time, but he's not going to have to be a star player for this defense to be good. He can go in there. Yeah. You relieve Hendrickson, you relieve Hubbard, you relieve whoever you need to on those defensive end spots, let him get some playing time, and then you hope by year 2 he is thriving when a few of these other contracts expire. And that's kind of what they did in the entire draft. I mean, you look at the cornerback spot with DJ Turner. They have Cam Taylor-Britt there. They have Chidibo Awuzie there. So they say, all right, look, DJ, we love you. You're fast. I think you were the fastest guy at the combine. We're going to get you on the playing field this year, but we want you to maybe be a starter in year 2, year 3. You don't need to worry about that this year. And even the third-round pick, Jordan Battle, also a defensive guy, same thing. Jordan, we don't need you to start this year. We've got Dax Hill. We've got Nick Scott. So, you'll come in, you'll play some, but we don't need you to be a starter right now. So I think with their top 3 picks, all defensive guys, They're just saying, hey, look, you guys just have to be contributors. You don't have to be stars. So that's kind of what I expect about Myles Murphy. I don't expect him to put up huge numbers, but I do think he'll contribute.
All right, worth a little sprinkle on that plus 3,000. You mentioned Sam Hubbard a couple times. Obviously, highlight of last year, the 98-yard fumble recovery against the Ravens to a touchdown. He says he feels better than ever. He's eyeing, double-digit sacks this year. Sully actually wrote an article saying that he is a dark horse for Defensive Player of the Year. He is 15-1 right now. How are you feeling about Sam Hubbard?
See, I don't think that's crazy. You want to sprinkle on something with a Bengals defensive player, take Hubbard. And by the way, that play against the Ravens, that might have been the greatest play in the history of the franchise. I mean, we're talking about a team. They don't have any Super Bowl wins, so you only have a handful of plays to choose from. They had a kickoff return for a touchdown in Super Bowl 23 by Stanford Jennings, but they lost that game. So when you're talking about a game-winning 98-yard fumble return touchdown, I still can't believe that happened. He should win the award just because he did that. But yeah, Sam Hubbard, you look at what he's done the last 2 seasons, 6.5 sacks in 2022, 7.5 sacks in 2021. He just seems to get better every single year. Now he's going into his 6th year with the team. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he hits double-digit sacks. And, the Bengals defense has been playing well with him contributing 6-7 sacks a year. You get him up to double digits, and, man, that makes this defense trouble for opposing offenses. So, yeah, I think Hubbard can absolutely get to 10 sacks. And, it might be tough for him to win Defensive Player of the Year, but it's not completely crazy. So, yes, I would gladly sprinkle a little on the Cincinnati kid winning DPOY.
All right. I love that. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking to John Breech about the Cincinnati Bengals. And we get back, we're going to talk Joe Mixon. You're watching Pick Six. Stay tuned. All right. Back here on Pick Six, Katie Mox here with Breech, and we are talking Bengals. All right. Let's talk about Mixon here. They're trying to restructure his contract. Do you think should we be worried that Mixon is not going to play at all this season?
I think he will be back. I think you're getting to the point in the offseason where if you were going to get rid of him, or ask him to take the pay cut, you probably need to do it in, say, May, so you can maybe get another running back in there just to add some depth. I mean, they've got plenty of guys by them. They drafted Chase Brown. They've got Travion Williams, but there are so many veteran running backs out there. I mean, heck, Ezekiel Elliott went through that whole thing earlier this offseason where he said he wanted to play for 3 teams, and one of them was the Bengals. Which was completely shocking to hear. But there's just so many free agent running backs out there, whether it's Elliott, whether it's Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt, where if you're the Bengals, you look at those guys, and these guys are going to be asking probably $6 to $8 to $9 million per year. And so you're kind of scratching your head saying, all right, do we want to get rid of Joe Mixon, who completely knows our offense? Yes, he is going to his cap hit at 9.4 million this year or whatever it is. He's going to make 9.4. His cap hit is 12.7. And so it's like, if we get rid of him and we sign one of those guys to a $6, $7, or $8 million contract, we're kind of taking a step back. Is it really worth that savings? So I think that Mixon absolutely ends up playing this year. And I think he ends up being a huge part of their offense like he has been for the past 2 years.
What about Dalvin Cook? I haven't really heard him, any interest at least, with the Bengals and him. I know Miami's still one of those top spots for him. What is there a possibility you think that Dalvin Cook could come to Cincinnati?
I would put the possibility of them bringing in any of those bigger names, guys that we just mentioned, at about 5%. There is that shock factor of maybe they do ask Joe Mixon to take a pay cut, and Mixon says no way. And but I don't think Dalvin Cook is going to play for less than probably say $8 million. And at that point, the Bengals would be taking a lateral move with someone who doesn't know the offense as well as Mixon. So I think Cook ends up with either the Jets or the Dolphins. I know that's where he's been connected to the most, but I don't think he'd end up in Cincinnati.
All right, it's Joe Mixon or bust. All right, if we look at the season and some of these future bets, Breech, Bengals have a very high win total of 11.5. That under is juiced to minus 125. They are tied with the Chiefs. Used to be the 49ers, but the 49ers got bumped down to 10.5, which I'm still slightly salty about, even though it's a better bet. Can we get over 11.5 wins in Cincinnati? I will also say total wins in division, 3.5, with that under juice to minus 170. It is a tough division. How do you feel about the win totals?
Well, I'll start with the division real quick. It's 3.5 because it's not like the Bengals have come in and dominated that division. Yes, they've won it the past 2 years, but you look at, say, 2020, Joe Burrow's rookie year. They went 1-5 in the division. Joe Burrow's never beaten the Cleveland Browns. Like, this team just struggles
Oh, wow.
with their divisional opponents. That doesn't make any sense. How is Joe Burrow never beaten the Cleveland Browns? So it does
He
make
beat
you.
Patrick Mahomes 3 times, but not the Browns. Like, it
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
what?
Yeah.
It doesn't. I'm scratching my head right now for anyone who's not watching. It doesn't. I'm trying to figure it out. So then you have, and because they struggle against the Browns, and even when they went to the Super Bowl in 2021, I think they went 4-2 in the division, and then last season they went 3-3. So they've always had the divisional opponents have played them the toughest. I don't know if it's because those are the teams that have not figured them out, but they just know what the Bengals are going to do. So I would probably take the over, but I'd be a little uncomfortable. I'd actually be more comfortable taking the over with their regular season win total.
Okay.
I look at the schedule, and you said it's 11.5, right?
11.5.
So 12-5 gets you the over. And so that means the Bengals would have to lose 6 games for this to go under. And if this team stays healthy, I just have a hard time seeing them lose 6 games. And I really think if they start 2-0, because they open up against the Browns and the Ravens, and as we just said, they've struggled against divisional opponents. If they start off 2-0, there is no way that under is hitting. So I like the over here just because there's so many winnable games. I don't see 6 teams that they can lose to on their schedule.
Well, when you look at this division, and we have the odds up on the screen here, they're the favorite, plus 125. You got the Baltimore Ravens underneath them, plus 275. The Ravens got better, I would say. Cleveland Browns, depending on how you look at the Deshaun Watson situation, they probably got better. I mean, at least they have him for a full season. And then you could never really count out the Steelers. Now, I do know you and I are on the same page with taking the Bengals to win the Super Bowl at plus 1,000. I just love those odds. And I definitely think that those are going to change later. But I also said I would take this division to be one to win the Super Bowl. Who do you think is their biggest competition in the AFC North?
Yeah, that is where we had our mind meld, Katie, when we had showed up on our best bets, and that was going to be my best bet, and I had to switch real quick because you said it first, which is an AFC North team to win Super Bowl. Yeah, I love that. I think the dark horse to me here, and maybe the best value, would be the Browns. I just think that their roster is so solid from top to bottom, and honestly, I think they're the biggest threat to the Bengals because you're talking about a team. It literally all hinges on Deshaun Watson. I mean, if Deshaun Watson from 2020 shows up, the Browns could go 13-4. But if Deshaun Watson looks like he looked last season, then we're talking about another year where Browns fans are giving up on the season by mid-year. And, we saw obviously what the Browns did last year, going 7-10 and Watson going 3-3. So you just don't know what you're going to get from Watson. So that's obviously the gamble of the gamble. That's the risk here. I don't think, I think the Steelers can get to the playoffs. I don't think they can win the division. We saw them go 9-8 last year. And obviously Baltimore is definitely a threat. Lamar Jackson, you give him another weapon with Odell Beckham. But if I had to pick based on value, I'd probably go with the Browns. But if I just went with my head and my heart and throw the value out the window, I'm rolling with Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, at plus 125, the fact that they've won the last couple of years, I like that bet as well. All right, we talked about Joe Burrow. We talked a little bit about Mixon. Let's talk about this trio of receivers, really one of the best in the league. You got Jamar Chase, his regular season receiving yards, 1,305. Then you got T. Higgins. He's just over 1,000.5. And then you look at Tyler Boyd. He's 625.5. How do we feel about the production for these 3 guys?
I would just slam the overs for all of them. It is. I mean, I cannot see a situation where they're not all getting solid production here. I mean, you look at what they did last season. I mean, we're talking about Jamar Chase missed 5 games and still went over 1,000 yards. And obviously you just mentioned that T. Higgins went over 1,000. If Jamar Chase plays the whole season, I mean, he's probably getting up over 1,500 or 1,600. And so I think he'll have another big year. And then was Tyler Boyd's over under?
625.5.
Yes. Okay. So 625. Whoa. And so that one's a little dicier because he put up, I think, 762 last season, but that was with Jamar Chase missing 5 games,
Yeah.
where you kind of bump up from being the number 3 guy to the number 2 guy, and you're getting a few more targets. But again, I think Higgins is going to have a huge year. I mean, it's a contract year for him. If he doesn't get that extension before the start of this season, then he knows that the Bengals are going to have to tag him next March, or he's going to get a huge extension by then. So, I mean, he is going to be somebody who has Joe Burrow throwing him the ball in a prolific offense with that edge of having a contract coming up. So I think Higgins will have a huge year. Chase will have a huge year. And you know what? I'm confident in those 2 overs. Tyler Boyd, not so much, but I'd still take the over.
Okay, taking the over on all 3. We're a bunch of overs here on the Bengals podcast today, which I actually don't disagree with any of these, and I'm not even a Bengals fan. So, Breech, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned for more All 32 with daily drops of the podcast in your feed and on YouTube. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on this, and we'll see you in the next one.